and welcome back to the most recent episode of our Empowered by UMortgage podcast. I am joined by somebody very special today. Lysa Nelson is out of our California branch, and she works with one of my favorite people. And I actually have tons of history with Lysa, which is super awesome. And she has been kind enough to join us today. And I can't wait to catch up. Lysa, welcome to the Empowered Podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and asking me to do this.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is so super fun. And it's like a full circle moment for me because, well, the first full circle moment is this is what's so cool about EmpowHERed. Like, I didn't know you. You didn't know me. We didn't really know that we even existed within this company until we kind of started, doing the Empower Hours. And like, you've been, joining us and participating and bringing so much value and heart and greatness to it. And that's why we're doing this. And this gives us just the opportunity to get to know each other and bond and build relationships. So it's like, it's so great.
Yes, it's so great. And I appreciate that. And I'm a huge fan of, bringing the women together in the environment. So we can do all the things that Empower is doing and do things like this.
Totally. Well, and you've been in the business for a long time. I've been in the business a long time. And what I learned about you during our last Empower Hour was that you were actually at Countrywide Wholesale running operations during the same time that I was there. And I just think that's also our second full circle moment I started my career at Countrywide. That's really where I learned all of the things and met a ton of mortgage brokers. I know loan officers all over the country for that. And you were like running operations back then. Tell me about that.
That's so crazy too, because I firmly believe this for such a big industry we have, it's really such a small world, right? There's always this like 6 degrees of separation between people we come across. And really Countrywide for me really launched me kind of into my corporate part of my career, right?
Yeah.
Prior to then, I'd been worked for some smaller shops and some brokers and things like that. And I started there just actually as an AVP of funding.
Okay.
So I was just over funding initially. The timing was that their VP of ops was getting ready to leave. So within 4 months, I actually then took over that role in operations. And as a result of just my, background, I'd had background in escrow processing, funding, closing, docs, all the things.
All of it. All the hats.
Yeah. So it definitely was, a little bit intimidating, right? And we talked a little bit about this in our Empower Hour, how at that time, there was no other female executives within the wholesale branch, right? We did have, a female director, but other than that, it was really Billionaire Boys Club.
Yep, totally. So, and did you take over for a male counterpart when you stepped from funding into that role of operations?
Actually, I did take over for a female, actually.
Got it. Okay.
And she had been there for some time, but they were considering a male for the position when I came along.
And did you put your name in the hat or did you say, I want to interview for this position, or how did that come about?
Actually, they approached me. So the EVP of the branch approached me about it and asked me if I would be interested in doing it.
Yeah.
And of course I said yes, because at the time I thought, well, this is just fantastic. It's just now my career is growing and growing, and that's the track I wanted to be on.
Do you think, where does that come from? Because I don't know if everyone would just say yes. Like you mentioned, feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I've got the experience. Like the imposter syndrome sets in. Like, how do you just say yes? And is that like what we need to recommend to our female colleagues? Like, just do it.
I think yes is what I'm going to say to that. Yes. And it is hard. It is hard because I did have reservations. I did have that definite over here was this like, wow, can I really, and they're really asking me to take over this whole huge department. Can I do it? And the other thing was I did want to do it. And so I really did have to grapple a little bit internally of kind of shutting that fear down and really kind of just closing my eyes and just saying, yes, okay, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but yes, let's do it.
Well, and I think that's something that is really unique and special about women. Like, as we're asked to do more and more, of course there's fear and uncertainty, but I think harnessing that and actually using that fear to say, hey, like, for example, I'm speaking at AIM Fuse for the WMN Summit on Thursday this week. To say that I'm not like anxious and feeling a little of that imposter syndrome would be like an understatement. So instead of, I said yes. I mean, Laura Brandeo called me and I was just immediately, yes, I'll be there. Thank you. But harnessing that fear and saying, okay, I'm going to use this to make sure I'm prepared, make sure that I over prepare to the sense that I am going to get up there and I am going to shine and I'm going to provide as much value as I possibly can. But I'm also going to use it as a learning opportunity and a stepping stone towards my next thing. Because if I don't push myself out of my comfort zone and continue to sort of level up and do more and more difficult things that I haven't done before, that I'm not comfortable with, then I'm never going to learn and I'm never going to grow. And I am not willing to be stagnant in any part of my life.
Right. Well, and I think too, for me at the time, honestly, I mean, I was a little bit younger and there was some ego behind it, right?
Sure.
There's a little bit of ego
That's
behind
healthy.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be the woman at the table, and for as much experience as I was able to bring to the position and there was a lot of things that were going to be new to me.
Yeah.
And I wanted the challenge, whether or not I had to wing it, whatever I had to do. You know what I mean? Because again, I was in that space of like, I really wanted to, move in that direction with my career.
Grow.
That was my intention. But like you said, as women, we do say, we do a lot to prepare, right? And we do a lot I would go home every night. And when I first got the original position, I would go home every night, literally read all the guidelines, every single guideline. I memorized everything, whatever department it had to do with, memorize the system, figure out how to get wires out past cutoff, all these things. And a lot of that is stemmed from our internalized imposter syndrome, right? Yeah. It's because we work hard as women, that's our nature. Yeah. But a lot of that is too. And so one of the things that I have actually learned since then is we do want to say yes to the right thing. Yeah. We need to learn how to say our best yes. Because otherwise we do get caught up in doing everything. Yeah. Right.
And doing too much. And then
doing too much.
Yeah.
Right. And then our emotional well-being is affected. Our health is affected. Our work can even be affected by those things. So. Yeah.
That's so huge. I think I struggle with that. And I go back and forth between, you certainly don't want to overcommit, because at the end of the day, that there's only one of you, there's only one of me, there's only so many hours in the day, and making the right choices and creating good boundaries around those things. Like having the right people around you that it's like, guess what? As I'm growing and as I'm evolving, my relationships are changing, and that is important. The things I'm saying yes to, those things are changing. The things that I'm saying no to may have been the things that I would have been like, absolutely, I can do that. And it's, as I evolve and change, I'm trying to be really aware of making sure that I'm recreating boundaries and setting those boundaries to allow that shift, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. It's that is a constant thing that we need to do. I think a lot of women too, particularly a lot of professional women, don't necessarily realize that. It's like, if we are maintaining growth, and I'm a firm believer, I always should be growing. I always should be learning, right? That doesn't necessarily mean I'm growing to the next, management position or whatever the case may be. Yeah. We have to define that for ourselves, what that looks like. But if we're not always growing and changing and we're staying still, A, we don't want to do that. B, if we, during that growth period, we do have to look at like everything. And I think a lot of people, women particularly, do forget that. We have to look at resetting boundaries, recreating priorities, determining, what our best yeses are. What do we say no to? And
I call that the checkup from the neck up, right?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, like whatever you're doing, you're saying yes to something.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So you're either
Exactly.
saying yes to like, self-deprecating or self-defeating behaviors, or saying yes to staying stagnant and not experiencing growth, saying yes to taking on too much and then experiencing burnout, saying yes to, just whatever you are doing, you are saying yes to something.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's so interesting. And it's such a complex topic. And I think especially for women. And I think it's important that we talk about it because it's okay. And I think that was what was so great about our last Empower Hour when we really broke that down. Because I think women are surprised that everyone goes through that.
Oh, absolutely. I think women are surprised when you get into a space like that, right? Or when you get into a space like the Women's Summit, right? Which I've been to, and
Totally. You've been a huge part of WMN.
And I love that group so much. When you get in those rooms and you start to find out you're not alone, right? We know as women, we are always sitting back here thinking these things to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I might think to myself, well, realistically, I'm not the only woman in the world who feels this way, but I certainly don't think I know anyone else who does.
Yeah.
And we have this fear of asking the question or saying to our desk neighbor or a friend, do you ever feel this way?
Yeah.
Right? Because for whatever reason, when we have those thoughts, we have some shame behind them too. Right? So we kind of, to say something out loud is like, oh, that's kind of scary, right?
It is. Well, you're being vulnerable, and anytime you risk vulnerability, you risk disappointment, you risk injury, you risk embarrassment, you
rejection.
Totally. Judgment. It's so complicated, but I think it's so good to be having these conversations because how empowering is it to stand next to somebody like Laura Brandeo, who just fills up the entire room and is this powerhouse. And then you hear her story and go, oh my gosh, like, it's similar.
At the end of the day, we're all human, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's challenge especially with social media and just like, we have so much of like a microscope into like certain parts of people's lives. So you're comparing everyone else's highlight reel to your real life that you have all of the information, and that can be a real slippery slope too. So I think just having real relationships, those core relationships, that's why this kind of thing is so important, and us getting together in November for the summit is so important, to have those real connections, because that authenticity is what can be missing in this day and age where we do everything virtually. Everything is, social media, everything is like, there's not enough of that real tangible, like, let's sit down and really bond and really connect and really build something unique that's based on trust and authenticity and vulnerability and all the things that, women really connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely are more of the, the creatures that, really thrive and feed off of that connection. I mean, I remember when COVID started and we all made this huge shift, and, suddenly everything was virtual and everything was online. And, we did some podcasts around that, and we talked about like, we focused on like the positives of it though. Like, what did that create? Like, Laura took it and created this, podcast series, and we would come on and we talk about, this is how it feels, but what are the positives that have come out of doing it this way? And there really is a lot of positives, I think, too. Doing this virtually, and the podcasts and all the things that have come out.
One of the things that I think happened to me through COVID, and I don't know if this is just like getting older or COVID, but I've always been such an extrovert and so social. And COVID forced me to really, I think, like kind of make the circle a little bit smaller and be more comfortable with, having some more alone time and, not necessarily isolating, but not having to be so extroverted all the time. And I think that's been a really interesting, change for me because I
Right.
am so outgoing, but I also need that like quiet time to really reflect and really just, kind of come back to that center. And I've really appreciated that change too. So, I mean, I think part of that's just getting older, but I think that's also
No,
part of
part of it. I mean, I agree with you too. I'm the same exact way, and it forced me to slow down
yeah.
in some ways. And there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't believe
Yeah.
anything happens by mistake, right?
No,
There's
absolutely
no
not.
coincidences. So there was a reason I needed to slow down. I'm not saying that's why COVID happened, but I'm just saying.
Totally. Well, and on that note, I mean, you are partnered with and working with one of my absolute favorite people at UMortgage, or just in general. So Matt, the mortgage guy, and I were literally some of the first. Some of the founding members of UMortgage.
Yes.
Like I was the first. I think he was like the third or fourth or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I don't know. We're right there together from the very beginning. He has such a big heart. He loves his family. He does so much work in the community. He's amazing on social media. He's got like something like 30,000 followers on the different platforms, just delivering so much information and so much value. I just have so much respect for him and his business. And you are right there at the helm, partnering with him, making it all happen. Like, how did you come to UMortgage, and how did you come to, work with Matt? And I'd love to hear that story because you guys just make such an amazing, amazing team.
Oh, thank you. He is a really great guy. And I ditto to everything that you said about him. So I actually had the one thing besides working in the secondary market that I had not yet done in my career was actually be a loan officer.
Mm-hmm.
And so just before COVID, just before 2020, 2019, I went ahead and decided to go ahead and get my license. So I spent a few years doing that, and some things just happened in my life where I stopped working for a bit. I think that I had, I'd only not been working for a couple months, and then I had made a decision to go back to school.
Yeah.
So I went back to school to start, to finish my bachelor's degree in psychology. A few months into that, I needed to go back to work.
Yeah.
So I literally just reached out in one of my Facebook groups of, all the people that I've met in the mortgage business and said, hey, I'm looking. Todd Bitter reached out to me. I've known Todd for quite some time before I came here to UMortgage, and said, hey, I think I have a position that would be really perfect for you.
Todd's
really
awesome.
Yeah.
He's literally one of my favorite people.
I know, mine too. And originally I had talked with him and the team about a processing position.
Yeah.
But Todd really, really sold me on the loan specialist position that I'm in now.
Totally.
Yeah. There are just so many. What I really love about it is I've really always been an operations person, with the exception of my couple years of doing, as an LO.
Yeah.
But this really kind of gives me the best of both worlds. Yeah. It's like I'm involved in sales, but I don't have to do the selling, and I'm involved in operations, right?
Well, you've got the relationships, right?
Yes.
So you can have those great relationships.
Yes.
You have the technical background, the loan programs, you're licensed, but it takes a very different person sometimes to go out and do like all of those things and sell on top of it. It's just so great when you have that hybrid, and then you're partnered with somebody who's so dynamic that you can trust them. You're like, Matt, go out there and, get the kill and bring it home, and I will cook it up and serve it for you.
Exactly. And I didn't start with Matt. So I haven't had him the whole time. And one of the greatest things about Matt is we have a working relationship. We have dialogue. Neither one of us are afraid to say, hey, I need you to do this better. Hey, can you do this better? Hey, can you do this? I need you to do this better. And that's part of how we're
Partnership.
getting better every day.
Yeah.
Right. The both of us, I think, and I think that helps, him. I think he had that before. But I know like a lot of loan officers aren't used to that. They're really not super used to someone who will say, hey, you need to slow down, or, hey, this doesn't work because of this. And I think too, even on the reverse of that relationship, like people can just get in a space of being fearful of just being honest. Right. And that just doesn't serve anybody.
Well, that's where trust is important.
Yes.
And Matt's production numbers, by the way, have exploded since you guys started working together. And I know that has a lot to do with the two of you and the great partnership and collaboration that you have. My loan partner is Tara, and I like to say I'm like a high-powered rifle and she's like a sniper shooter. Like, listen, I can be out of control if I'm in the wrong hands, but like in her capable hands, it's like we're a deadly combination, and that works for us, We have to have that relationship and that partnership for her to say, Kahren, you need to do this. You need to call this person. Like, did you follow up with this? I mean, she and I have to have that trust and that reciprocity in our relationship where we can really speak to each other that way. And I rely on her to do those things because sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. And that's what she helps me accomplish and like brings me back down to planet Earth with like some sort of super lasso. And I often need that too.
And that's the other thing too. I'll tell you, I mean, just speaking from a lot of experience with working with loan officers, if they are unhappy with you or you've made a mistake or something goes sideways, they can be very unpleasant. And Matt has a really great way of communicating. Like it's never like that. You know what I mean? And I think too, that has a ton to do with who he is as a person.
For sure.
And it has a ton to do with the culture here.
Yeah, for sure.
So that is spoken, right?
I totally agree with you. And it's like, you don't kick the dog, man. We're all in this together. And that is the culture here. And Matt absolutely embodies that. And I think that's you totally hit the nail on the head. That's so important. And that's why we work so hard for each other, is because guess what? Every day is different. There are different challenges that present every day, and we have to work together. And there is no room for there's just no room to treat others poorly to try to accomplish something that you're doing as a team. Like there's always room for growth. There is always, even if you did a flawless transaction, you should still go back and review every part of it to refine your process to get better every day.
Yes.
And that's just us working together as humans and really caring about the service that we provide, about the future that we provide, about the relationships that we create. And I totally agree. I don't care if you're a top producer or not. If you're a crummy human or you don't treat people the right way, like, nope. Sorry, go somewhere else.
And the truth is these relationships, they should be looked at like any other relationship, close relationship you have in your life.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't, I think you'd find that if you looked that the relationships that are like this, like what we're talking about, like you have with Tara, I have with Matt, those are going to be successful relationships. They're going to be successful people because they acknowledge that. Like be good to my friend, right? I wouldn't talk to myself that way. I won't talk to Matt a certain way, and you have to look at and assess your relationship, assess the trajectory of what's going on, just like any marriage, just like any other kind of companionship, right?
Well, just because of that
doesn't mean we can't look at it like that. We do.
Totally.
We need to.
Well, and some of that is looking at, we've talked about receiving and giving feedback. And I've read a lot about just women receiving feedback in the workplace. And often men don't want to give women feedback in the workplace, or women don't want to. And so that ends up stunting some of their opportunity and stunting some of their growth. And one of the most powerful things that you can do around feedback is to give it, frame it properly, to receive it, to frame it properly, and to allow that openness and that trust. Because if somebody cares enough to feed back to you, that should be a reflection of their willingness and their wanting for both of you to grow together. And I think that we need to, as women, encourage that feedback and not be afraid of it, or not take it personally, or not be defensive, or not be upset, but be like, man, this person cares enough to feed back to me. Maybe I feel like it's unreasonable, or maybe I don't, but like, that's because they care. If they didn't care, they just be like, whatever, Lysa, like,
Yeah.
Move on.
Well, and this is another time where I talk about with practicing the pause, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because male or female, when you get feedback, if you have been subject to rejection in your past, if you're not, we have to be emotionally and mentally healthy.
Yeah.
Right. We have to recognize our triggers. So let's just say, for example, if you've had a lot of rejection in your life from a guy, from your father, all the way down to whoever, instantly you take it on the offense. And we inward again, that imposter syndrome. Oh, see, I should have known, I'm not good enough. And then we don't want to say anything. I don't want to say, hey, that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Do I really want to say in my work environment, hey, the way that kind of hurt my feelings? But we do need to. We have to say, like, if someone didn't say it in a way that like framed it,
like, let me understand, like seeking to understand.
We do have to say it. And it's okay to say, this is how I took it.
Yeah.
I took it like this, because we're all subject to doing it. Again, just being human by nature, male, female, we're subject to doing it. And it's just going to make the relationship stronger if we do say those things and we try to get over the fear of saying it, right? It's going to make the relationship stronger, but it's also individually going to make us grow more. You know what I mean?
And I think when you go through those things with your team or with your partners or with like whoever it is in that professional environment, that builds trust too, because when you get through those and come out the other side and are able to really go through that, then you know that you can go through other hard things. And as we live through hard times in the industry, hard conversations with other people, hard situations with whatever that is, and then we make it through to the other side, then that gives you more confidence to know, hey, guess what? Next time I can do this too, because there will be a next time.
Yep, that's right. And we can look back on those. Yeah. And we can always look back on those achievements. We have to try to remember to look back and then, put them in place, like for whatever the situation is right now today, which can be hard also, but it's something we need to make sure we're doing.
I totally agree. And I love your advice about the pause. That is so true. Like if I've ever gotten like an email that just ticked me off and it's like, nope, just take a minute, take a lap, take a breath, have a glass of water. Come back to it. Don't send that.
Yeah. Send it in your brain. Type it. Don't hit send. Don't type it because you might accidentally hit send.
Oh God, that is like my fear.
Yeah.
I think that's like, no, that gives me anxiety. That's so funny.
I know. But that's why we have to find means. We have to find, creative ways, healthy ways to express those things that come out. The very first thing just for me always is just stop.
Yeah.
Practice the pause, take a breath, and if I'm not ready to re-engage back in the situation or whatever, wait till I'm ready.
Yeah. Wait till you're ready. Practice the pause. I love it. Lysa, you're amazing. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you're a part of the Empowered by UMortgage and just UMortgage in general.
Me too. Thank you.
So excited to talk with you more about this stuff because I love everything that you've said. And I just think that your psychology background is really interesting and fascinating and must so help you in this job and in this role. And I love it. And I appreciate everything you do for us. Thanks for joining
You
me today.
too, Kahren. Thank you.
All right, my dear. Have a good one.